It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Back to the program, Mr. Josh Waters from Political Strategies. Josh, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Paul. How's it going?
It's going well. So the reason we wanted to have you on, obviously, is because the tax farce on taxes met the last 2 days. You were at the Marble Palace. I'm sorry you had to go there, but you were there. So kind of tell us what the feeling is. What were the discussions on the tax farce this time?
Well, the meetings this week were basically on the sales tax and specifically looking at sales tax exemptions and considering which ones to maybe take away. With the idea that, if we take these exemptions away, that technically can be considered maybe a tax increase because that money would then be flowing to the government, which was not flowing before. And so they're looking at all these tax exemptions, specifically sales tax exemptions, and seeing, okay, how much money would this mean if we got rid of this exemption? How much more money would the state get? And if they did get that money, what could they then do with it? Could they cut income taxes? Could they, not cut anything? Basically just trying to get an idea of what the value of these sales tax exemptions were. That was really the meat of this week's meeting, or this month's meeting. And then that'll flow into the April meeting as they'll actually kind of be debating and looking at, recommending, yes, get rid of this tax exemption, no, keep this one, based off input from the industries that are affected from those sales tax exemptions.
Do you think they see ending an exemption as a tax increase? I mean, your definition I agree with. If it's more money going to the government, that would be an increase, right? So would they see it as an increase? What do you think?
I think it probably depends on who you ask. I think some people, they've gotten to the point where they realize now, one of the senators made a comment yesterday, well, we'll probably raise some and then we'll lower some and it'll come out in a wash or revenue neutral type way. And so I think there are some who are kind of seeing that we've been down this road a few times now where we'll raise taxes one place and lower them somewhere else. And some will try to phrase it as a, tax cut, or I don't know what they'll phrase it as, but it goes back to the idea of a revenue neutral tax cut, which really isn't a tax cut. And so at the end of the day, like you said, if the government's getting more money and if you take away these tax exemptions, I mean, some of them may need to be taken away. They're probably not very justified. But if you do that, I would like to see, we're going to cut spending, whatever that amount, to where, there's not more going out in spending. So we'll see. But in the April meeting, that's what they'll be debating. They gave basically a laundry list. Each member of the task force was given a list of all the exemptions. And then they went through and they picked off which ones they thought, we need to come back and review this and debate this in next month's meeting and consider maybe or not about keeping it or ending this sales tax exemption.
We're talking with Josh Waters from Political Strategies. I saw the list that the DFNA put out there of the sales tax exemptions and the amount of money that the state's not getting because this is exempt from sales tax. And I saw one of at the top of the list was the gas tax. So there's not a sales tax on gasoline. There is, but there is a gas tax on it. And so they're saying that's exempt. And I thought to myself, surely they wouldn't leave the current taxes that we pay on gasoline on and add a 6.5% sales tax. I mean, what are you hearing about that?
So that's something that's actually come up a few times throughout this process in the tax force, because, like you said, it's not technically a sales tax the way it's structured now, but if they did add a sales tax, it would basically be double taxation on our gasoline. Now, when you look back, remember, Paul, in the 2017 session, that's what they're trying to do under Dan Douglas's bill. They're trying to add a sales tax at the wholesale level of gasoline. And that was going to bring in, I think, $217 million if they got that passed. And so they're going to be, again, looking at that at least as what some are considering that, well, that's a sales tax exemption, even though there is a type of excise tax on there already on the sale of gasoline. And so that's something they'll be debating. I'm sure, some of the more conservatives on the task force will hopefully again bring up, this will be basically double taxation on this product. It will increase prices. I think it was about 10 cents per gallon whenever the measure that they tried to pass during the 2017 legislative session. But that is one that at least one of the members of the task force wanted to put on the list to be considered for next month's meeting.
Has there been any discussion about how we got to this point in terms of the number of exemptions and carve-outs that there are in the Arkansas tax code? I mean, has there been anyone who's just fessed up to it and said, it's just kind of the nature down here that over the years, special interests have been successful in carving out their little areas where they don't have to pay any taxes?
Yeah, I think some legislators have been pretty upfront with that, and I think everyone realizes that's what's happened for most of this. But really, those are some of the smaller ones. Maybe a few $1,000s that the state's not getting a $10,000 or so. Some of the bigger ones are, like the grocery tax or the fuel tax. Some of the bigger ones are those, big ticket items. But yeah, when you look through some of these exemptions, I think I saw one. It's like specific entities or nonprofits or names, and so that's a special carve out if they start naming.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Specific companies. So
I've heard for a long time. We're talking with Josh Waters from Political Strategies. He was at the task force meeting on taxes, yesterday. I've heard for a while people complain that the reason government revenue is stagnant, which it's not. I mean, they keep getting more and more money from us every year. But that's what they claim, that the government is hurting because we have shifted away from a product-based economy where you actually go buy something and it's tangible and you hold it and you pay sales tax on it, to a service. There are way more services out there that people are purchasing now. It's more of a service economy, and services are not taxed. So they have a segment in there, or a section in there, about advertising, right? Or you think about the services that you pay for and how you're not charged taxes for that. So is there going to be a push, you think, to start taxing services right now where there is no tax?
There were a few services, but really not a ton that were kind of on that list that ended up going on this, master list, if you want to call it, that'll be reviewed in April. Now there were some that it was like subscriptions to newspapers, advertising on billboards, advertising on in newspapers, the sale of newspapers themselves, that kind of a thing. So that's still not really much of a service. It's a product, an advertising, an ad in a newspaper, something like that. So there wasn't really that much of a push. I know Nicole Keating from the Tax Foundation was there on Monday, and I was not there in person on Monday. I was there Tuesday. But looking through the presentation, she worked with ACRE, writing a really good outline of some tax reform ideas and kind of where we are in Arkansas. And I know that's something that they have mentioned is, okay, we need to add more services under the sales tax, or in some way tax it to make up for this, like you said, the change over time from more product-based purchasing to more and more services-based purchasing.
Okay. All right. Well, so I guess to kind of recap here, I'm worried, like you, that this is going to be more like, revenue neutral, and revenue neutral tax cuts are not tax cuts, in my opinion. But I'm sure there'll be plenty of people telling their constituents that they cut their taxes. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's still not clear. There's been some mentions from time to time. What's the end goal? Is the end goal, to get the top income rate from 6.9 to 6%? Is the end goal to get rid of the income tax? Is the end goal just to find enough money so that we can keep increasing spending like we are? It hasn't been super clear, at least from attending these the last several months, what the end goal is for the task force, because when you look at the mission and what they came out with, it was, tax reform. And so that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So the next few months, I think we're really going to see, okay, what's the goal? Because they're actually going to have to get into, start listing out some recommendations on, okay, keep this sales tax exemption or not, or let's lower the income tax rate in this bracket by this much. So I think we'll see more of that going forward. But it hasn't been super clear, at least to me, what the end goal is for the income tax or sales tax. It's just been a lot of information, and I think maybe over the next few months we'll see some of the end goal recommendations.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to mention, Paul, though, that came up and was passed in yesterday's meeting was they passed at least the authority to enter into another consulting contract.
Oh, great.
And so if you remember, of course, you covered many times on the show, Randy Bauer was the initial consultant that came on to the task force and was fired. And so they had one meeting without any consultant, and I actually thought that went really well, a lot of really good information from BLR and DFNA. And then this meeting this week was without really any consultant being there, but they have authorized up to, I think, $88,000 for a consultant for some dynamic scoring. It's the I can't remember the name, but it's some of the same people who did some of the dynamic scoring for the Big River Steel. So basically what they're wanting to do is say, okay, if we get rid of these exemptions, if we keep these corporate welfare incentives, if we make this change here, what's the dynamic score rather than just the
static
score of,
yeah.
Okay, we'll get $50 million less money. What impact will it have to this revenue stream or that revenue stream? So that's something that, did come out of the task force this week is this new consulting contract for dynamic scoring.
Interesting. Okay, well, I guess we'll kind of see where we go from here. I mean, I'm a fan of dynamic scoring. I think that's where the left always gets you. They want to score tax cuts based on a static scoring level. I mean, but I don't know. It's just with what has happened with the whole consultant thing in the past, and these task forces have ended up being ways to just get to a predetermined result. I don't have a lot of confidence. But hey, I hope government shrinks. I hope they actually get the job done. That's where I am on this. And Josh Waters, I appreciate you coming on the program, sir, from Political Strategies. It's always a pleasure.
All right. Thanks for having me, Paul. Have a great day.
All righty. Josh Waters, everybody. We're going to take a break. This is Conduit News.